Good afternoon. It is 12:30. I'm sure one or two of our colleagues will be joining us, but we will make a start. I'm Cathy Smith, KPO lead. We have already checked in that we are filming across to PRH for those that are able to join in there. And Richard Stevens, KPO specialist, is there to make sure everybody's fine over at Telford. Look out for the colour orange this afternoon. Our RPIW team wanted to acknowledge the Stand Up to Cancer campaign, and so we're honouring that this afternoon. And in amongst you lovely people this afternoon, we have not one but two transformational sensei. So we have Rosemary King, who I just want to wave, and also Melissa Lynn sitting next to her, who you've really met several times before. We've been absolutely privileged to be able to learn from Virginia Mason and the Virginia Mason Institute over the last 2 years, and that's enabling us to accelerate our learning journey and apply Lean. Virginia Mason and the Institute have been applying Lean now for 15 years, so they're sharing all their learning and allowing us to take quicker and bigger steps in our journey. And we're embedding that learning in our methodology, in our production system called Transforming Care Production System. So Rosemary and I have been leading the first Advanced Lean training course here at SATH, and in fact the first ALT training in the partnership organisations, the 5 trusts that are in partnership with Virginia Mason at the moment. So we try not to have any competition, but it's always nice to be first as well. And on the picture behind me is our first Fab 4 who have achieved their ALT certification, and next year you'll start to see them appearing here in Marie Claire's role this afternoon as team leads. And I can see Paula Dabbs to my right, who's one of those Fab 4 there. And on Thursday next week, we look forward to hosting NHSI, that's NHSI, NHS Improvement, who are here to review the great work that's been happening over the last 2 years. We're the 5th trust that they're visiting, and the team will spend some time with the guiding team and the KPO team, but the majority of their time will be spent on the Gemba. So out in our department, seeing for themselves such things as the People Link Board, Production Board, Standard Work, Daily Management, all of those tools that are assisting our staff to do their work. And they'll see the impact of the work undertaken by our Lean leaders, our RPIW teams and our 5S workshops. And talking of 5S, that's been a major component of the work this week, which you'll hear about, and it starts with sorting the necessary from the unnecessary. And they've been in amongst the medical secretary cupboards this week, thinking about what items add value and what items don't add value to the process in hand. And you might be surprised to see that, considering we're looking at the grading process, so making sure that the patients see the right clinician in the right clinic, they came across a decanter, which has been sitting in the cupboard for some time. And they thought about, how can we add value to that? And the answer was... So, on that note, I'm going to hand over to these, the RPIW team, who will come up and share their story.
So hello, welcome, and thank you for attending today's report out for this Rapid Process Improvement workshop. We shall be reporting out to a tack time of 15 minutes. I am Louise Brennan, Kaizen Promotion Office Specialist, and proud to be workshop lead for this RPIW. This week's RPIW has been for the Ophthalmology outpatient value stream, and the team this week have focused on the new patient referrals and how they are graded. The team assembled this week to address the scope include a booking office clerk, medical secretary, coordination team staff, operational manager, consultant ophthalmologist, marketing manager and clinic prep clerk. Lean concepts of 5S, mistake proofing and level production have been used to address improving the flow and remove wastes and defects that occur throughout the process. I'll now hand over to the team for them to tell you the story.
Good afternoon, my name is Marie Claire Wigley and I'm a KPO specialist and I've had the pleasure of being team lead for this RPIW. The target progress report for this RPIW details 8 metrics. The baseline metrics are from direct observation with the target set by our sponsor. The total lead time for this RPIW from when a referral arrives in SATH to when it arrives graded in the booking office is currently 14 days. The target set by our sponsor was to reduce this to 2 days. The sub-lead time of when a referral is prepared for grading to when it is graded is currently 9 days, with a target set to reduce this to 1 day. The parts distance travelled in steps by the paper referral, moving from the booking office to the secretary's office and back, is our next metric, which has a baseline of 830 steps and a target of 415 steps. Our other parts travelled metric looks at the printed e-referral, which travels 415 steps from the medical secretary's office to the booking office. The target set by our sponsor was 0 steps. 3 quality defects were identified as follows. The percentage of non-urgent referrals that are not graded and returned to the booking office within 72 hours of receipt in SATH. Our baseline was that 100% of referrals that were not graded within 72 hours. Our target is 0%. The second quality metric is the percentage of paper referrals that are on hold and have waited over 2 weeks for grading, which has a baseline defect rate of 46%. The target is 0% defects. The third quality metric is the percentage of e-referrals that are rejected, which has a baseline of 5% defect with a target of 0%. Our last metric was measured using the 5S tool, looking at the environment of the medical secretarial space. The baseline was level 1 with a target of level 4. The TAC time, or pace of the work for medical secretaries processing the referrals, was 30 minutes. The boundaries for this value stream are from when a referral arrives at SATH to when it's returned to the booking office having been graded. The cycle boxes show what happens at each step in the process and who's involved. It shows how long each step takes and any waits between each step. The Kaizen bursts demonstrate defects and waste in the process. The current value-added time for the patient is only 1%. The process flow chart shows the wastes on the pink post-its, and the red wool shows the flow as inappropriately timed and with defects. I'll now hand you over to the team who will tell you about the work they've done this week.
Hello, my name's Emma Peaver and I'm one of the operational managers for the Medicine Centre. The problem we looked at was the number of motions required to obtain a referral and have it logged on the system ready for grading. We also looked at the location and accessibility of the post trays within the booking office. Our idea was to combine all of the steps required to open, check and log a referral into one more streamlined task. We also looked at moving the post trays from the end of the room into a more central location where they would be clearly identified so as to reduce the defect of post waiting to be dealt with. We created a standard worksheet to record the number of journeys the referral travelled in the office before we made any amendments. Before improvements, the referral would move 5 times and the booking clerk would move 7 times. Following our new process, both the referral and the booking clerk will each move just 3 times. By moving the trays and streamlining the process for paper referrals, we've improved the flow and reduced the wastes of motion, transportation and time. We created a standard process description with the booking team, and this is being used to support the implementation of our new process and also to help train any new members of their team.
Hello, my name is Lorna and I work in the clinic prep office. The problem we identified was the run lead time. This is the process of the booking clerk walking the referrals to the medical secretaries around 2:30 in the afternoon, leaving them in the consultant's trays ready for them to grade. The problem we found was that the referrals could be waiting too long before being graded and returned to bookings. The idea to solve the problem was to change the run time. We decided to test bringing the run time forward to 12:30, so any consultants returning to their office at lunch or between clinics for afternoon admin time would have the referrals available. We tested with the booking clerk and the medical secretaries, having them run early in the day to see if the referrals were graded sooner. The results are positive. We found this has reduced the lead time, with referrals being graded and returned to the booking office sooner.
Hello, my name is Andrew James and I'm a member of the corporate governance team. The referrals that required grading by a consultant were being left on their medical secretary's desks in no defined place. This meant that there was a possibility they could go missing or become mixed with other paperwork. We conducted a 5S assessment of the area and proposed a dedicated in-tray to receive referrals on each desk with a single point of collection in each office. We also felt that the urgent referrals needed to be more prominent and suggested a red folded route as a visual control. To test the implemented change, we followed delivery and collections. This was undertaken in the same time, however the approach of mistake proofing was seen to be effective. At the start of the RPIW, the area was at level 1. Following the implemented changes, a level 2 was achieved.
Hello, my name is Nisha and I'm a booking officer for Ophthalmology. The problem we identified was that the secretarial space was very full and there was a risk of referrals getting lost. We noted that there were 2 cupboards on the corridor that were not being used to their full potential. The idea was to organise the cupboards using 5S so that one could be used for medical notes and the other for stationery, which would free up the space in the office. In that process, we found a lot of inventory that was not being used. For example, 15 boxes of toner cartridges that didn't match the printers that were up there. Stationery has now been organised depending on what is used the most, and shelves have been colour coordinated to make it clear. Kanbans have been used, which are visual cues to say when stock needs reordering, and medical notes have been organised by date and clinic type, making it easier and quicker for staff to find. The results are that we went from being a level 1 on the 5S levels of achievement grid to being a level 3, and we've had really positive feedback from the secretaries who have found this extra space for medical notes useful as it's helped free up desk space.
Hi, my name's Emma Grove. I'm the support coordinator for Ophthalmology. Any paper referrals should be sent to the booking office. However, observations show that some of them were being sent to the secretaries to then be sent to bookings. This was causing a delay in the grading. In addition, the on-hold referrals were being chased up after 2 weeks, which was a long wait for the patient. We had the idea to communicate with the GPs referring into the trust to remind them where they should be sent. We decided to see whether the medical secretaries could be emailed after 1 week so they are aware sooner of the long waiters. I liaised with the GP liaison officer who is going to send out a communication to the GPs via their GP Connect newsletter, reminding them where to send their referrals. The email to the medical secretaries has been sent out at 1 week and the process tested, moving away from end-of-line inspection. Over the next 30 days, we will be monitoring the defect of the number of referrals going direct to the medical secretaries and send out further reminders as needed. We also plan to liaise with IT to see if they can send an automated weekly alert to the medical secretaries to reduce the burden of work on the staff who produce the report.
Hello, I'm Suresh Sahili, consultant ophthalmologist. The problem we identified was although the referrals were coming in electronically, they were then printed by the secretaries for the consultants to grade. This would require a few staff to do this, and there was time spent on printing and transportation. The lead time we recognized was about 2 weeks at this stage. So the idea we came up with was to ask the consultants to grade them electronically. So the first thing we did was get a smart card for the consultant to grade, and we graded the referrals electronically for oculoplastic specialty. The results were that the lead time reduced significantly to as low as 24 hours. The number of people involved now was only 1, and there was a significant amount of time saved for the secretaries, and there was no transportation time required because they were electronic. For the patients, this meant that the triaging was earlier. This was down from 2 weeks to 24 hours, and there was zero risk of losing any referrals. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sally and I work with the Ophthalmology Medical Secretaries. E-referrals were being printed out and not being graded electronically. This was a waste of time, motion and transportation. Also, when paper referrals were rejected, medical secretaries had to type an individual letter to the referrers, which also was a waste of time and caused a delay in the letter being sent. Our idea was to engage with the clinicians and support them by creating standard work for the accepting and redirecting of e-referrals. For the rejection letters, we suggested the creation of an automated letter which would be sent from Semahelix when a cancellation is made. The standard process description was tested with a consultant ophthalmologist as part of our PDS cycle. The letter was tested with the ophthalmology management team, and the creation was supported both by bookings and the secretaries. The SPD was found to be easy to follow and will be available for clinicians using e-referrals to grade. The letter is being sent to our external letter printing service for trial and will be then available on Semahelix.
Hello, my name is Lizzie. I work in patient access as a learning and development trainer, and I am the process owner for this RPIW. The value stream map shows that the improvements made during this RPIW have addressed most of the Kaizen bursts. The introduction of visual control, standard work and removing waste from the process means that referrals can be graded within 24 hours, which is an amazing 92% reduction on the lead time. The future state process flowchart shows waits and delays in the process have been reduced and most wastes have been removed for each of the process steps. The black string between each step demonstrates that the process is timely and defect-free. The home teams this week have been a brilliant support in making this happen and taking part in the PDSA of the ideas the teams have been trying. As process owner, over the next 30 days I will complete the items on the newspaper and continue to PDSA the improvements, and I look forward to sharing the results with you over the next 3 months.
The away team this week have embraced the RPIW process and worked hard on the Gemba with a very patient home team to test and implement the many ideas put forward to improve the process. So it's therefore my pleasure to share with you the results. The lead time from when the referrals arrive at SATH to being graded and returned to the booking office if needed is now 24 hours, with a sub-lead time of when a referral is prepared for grading to when it's graded is now 2 hours. This is due to the changes in the run time for the paper referrals and the introduction of standard work for the grading consultants and the use of the electronic grading system. The parts travel distance travelled in steps by the paper referral remains at 830 steps. However, I'm really pleased to say that the e-referral no longer makes that journey and the steps are reduced to 0 because they're being graded electronically and are no longer printed. The percentage of referrals that are not graded and returned to the booking office within 72 hours of receipt in SATH remains at 100%. However, with the changes that have been made to the process, we will expect to see this reduce over the next 30 days. The second quality metric is the percentage of paper referrals that are on hold and have waited over 2 weeks for grading, which has reduced currently to 40% defect. The third quality metric is the percentage of e-referrals that are rejected, which is now 1%. The 5S of the medical secretary space has improved from a level 1 to a level 2, with the storage areas rising from a level 1 to a level 3, which means the area is clearer with needed items easily available and the less risk of the paper referrals being misplaced. We have also introduced 2 implementation metrics which will measure how often the newly developed standard work is being carried out.
In the current climate of the NHS, it can seem a luxury to spend a week away from work to review a process. What we know is that for improvements to be successful and sustained, sufficient time and resources are required, including time for staff to come away from their day jobs to undertake training or participate in quality improvement activities. Without the headspace and time to contribute to improvements, a culture of coping and making do is adopted. The Transforming Care production system is about empowering our staff to challenge the current state and start to identify opportunities for improvement. Continuous improvement is a marathon and not a sprint. The away team felt at times this week as they started something, it would reveal another issue, and the task sometimes felt enormous. Continuous improvement is about lots of small steps that, when accumulated together, will get you to the finish line. The away team have done an amazing job this week, initially quiet and reserved, but by Thursday they were sharing jokes and deciding as a team what to wear today. Marie-Claire has been our team lead, has done a great job of supporting the team and sharing her knowledge of the ophthalmology service. Both home teams have been a delight to work with this week. They've been very receptive to test new ideas and provide feedback. The team would like to extend their thanks to the many people that have supported this RPIW this week. I'd also like to thank Andy, our sponsor, for setting the targets for the RPIW, which have kept the team driven to create an efficient process and respectfully challenge the current state. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Andy Scott, ENT surgeon, and I was the sponsor for this RPIW. I'd first of all like to congratulate the team. They've got on fantastically well this week, and I think you'll agree that they've produced some really great results. I suppose the headlines for me are firstly that they've removed so many of those risks of losing a referral. So they've made the world a safer place for our patients. They've also exceeded the target I set them in turning around the referral from more than 2 weeks to 24 hours, which I think is fantastic. just to put the patient voice on that, and perhaps if we were to do this RPIW again, that's one thing we should have included a patient. But you're sat at home, it's your referral or a member of your family, you think we're working on your referral. If we've lost it, no progress is being made at all. If we haven't lost it, it's 2 weeks to have an answer. In this day and age, I can't think of many other industries where people would put up with a 2-week wait for a response. So getting it down to those 24 hours has been absolutely key, so well done. Not only that, they've also found a lot of waste and barriers as they've gone around. They've removed those wastes and barriers, and I hope that the working environment in the secretarial area, the booking office and clinic prep will all significantly benefit as a result. So to sum up, well done, great job, thank you very much.
Welcome, Mel.
Hi, my name is Mel Watkis and I am the process owner for the third RPIW within the Ophthalmology Outpatient Clinic Value Stream, which looked at improving the clinic preparation process at RSH. The process boundaries are from when a clinic list is printed until the patient's notes are transferred to the clinic. Following our 60-day remeasures, the lead time had increased, but I am delighted to report that following our 90-day remeasures, the time had reduced by 32%. Importantly, this is a great result as it has managed to reduce, despite a 100% increase in our productivity, following the transfer of most of the clinics from PRH to RSH. Additionally, we have achieved this despite a 29% reduction in our staffing from a 3.5 whole-time equivalent to a 2.5. For me, this demonstrates that the changes we made during the RPIW has had a significant impact on our ability to ensure we are enabled to provide our patients with their notes prior to the clinic, despite the large increase in productivity. I am pleased to report that our 3 quality defects have all reduced from the baseline, although we still have a 60% defect rate around interruptions. The idea we have been testing out to reduce interruptions to our staff was to provide a dedicated telephone number and an email address, which was to be actioned by a nominated member of staff agreed at the morning huddle. Despite these changes, the defect remains quite high, and therefore I will continue to PDSA this process. With the introduction of a prep kit box, our setup reduction has reduced by 87%. Following the success of this box, I am now looking at providing more boxes for the team, as well as rolling out to other areas within clinic prep. Overall, I am very pleased with the results of our 90-day remeasures. I was concerned that the large increase in productivity would have a significant impact on these measures and therefore morale within the team. However, I am confident the changes we have made has enabled us to cope with this increase and ensured our patients have received their notes on time.
It's always a great pleasure standing up here. I do none of the work during the week and I get to stand up here in front of everyone. It's absolutely perfect. Andy Elves couldn't make it today, so just concentrating really, Mel. Thank you very much for standing up and giving us some of your report out for the 90-day remeasures for values for RPIW3. I mean, I think that's amazing looking at some of these figures. I mean, just an absolute highlight there. When we look back at the baseline of the lead time, 635 minutes, we've seen a 32% reduction down to 430, but the standout is the work in progress, which although there's been a reduction in 30%, the standout is actually an increased work in progress of 100%, which is really quite phenomenal considering about the workforce issues that you've just mentioned. We are aware that there are some other issues and we hope we'll continue to facilitate them, and I think we may hear a little bit from Melissa around the Gemba Walk that took place this week as well. I certainly hope so. I think what it does demonstrate is that this process for me is not just about making people do more work, and I think Andy made a really interesting comment just when I walked in, and it was really around the fact that he never really appreciated what the process was. It's great being given a set of referrals as a consultant in a file with your nice comfy chair and your gold-plated office that we all sit in. But actually the reality is that there are so many processes within the organisation that we just do not understand. And I think if we're truly going to be that dignified organisation demonstrating respect to everyone, there's a real message there about us understanding what goes into the daily work and the standard work. And I think that is what this methodology is going to bring to us. So RPIW4, great work, and I think the outcomes from this will help guide us as a sponsor team in terms of helping to direct the value stream a little bit further, because it always generates far more questions and suggestions about what we should do than necessarily solutions to the problem. I love the bringing in the patient perspective, making it a safer place. We have had patients within a number of RPIWs within Value Stream 4, and this morning I was briefly in a patient safety conference, and the first thing I looked for was where are our patients. So I just think that's something we've got to keep emphasising and ensuring that we do that. And I think my final thing is that yet again we're just sort of seeing that interface coming in about how we engage with our external stakeholders as well with all of this. And I think as a sponsor team and as feeding into the guiding team, I'm sure Simon might want to say something about it as well, is how we see that rolling out, not only within the trust, but also into with our external partners as well. So brilliant work. You're still smiling. Fantastic. It was great meeting you all earlier in the week. Well done, and keep up the hard work.
So, I'm Rosemary King. I am from the Virginia Mason Institute. My role here this week was to support Kathy as she coached Marie Claire through her team leading role on her journey towards certification. The team has done a fantastic job of sharing their story, so I'm going to keep my comments short and sweet. First, I'd like to recognize Marie Claire and Louise for leading this RPIW. It takes a great deal of work and planning to execute an RPIW, and they led this work with a great deal of enthusiasm and energy. So congratulations on a great job. Next, I'd like to acknowledge the team. While a bit reserved at first, they really quickly jumped into the work, spending most of their time on the Gemba, making improvements, PDSing new processes, and engaging the home teams. It was a pleasure to see the team using the tools of 5S, standard work, mistake proofing, visual controls to eliminate waste and improve the process for both the patients and for the staff. By re-engineering the referral grading process and leveraging the e-referral system, this team significantly reduced the lead time, removing the long waits and delays for our patients. They also reduced the burden of work for the staff involved in this process. The wastes they removed were transportation, motion, defects, time, processing. I think they eliminated all 7 wastes in this process, so they did a fantastic job. As with all RPIWs, as you do this work, you continue to uncover opportunities to further improve the process, so I look forward to hearing more about what you're doing to improve this process along the way. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see familiar faces as well as new ones as well. It's been a very, very busy week for my Sensei visit, this being the second one that I personally have done, and certainly the third for all of us here at Shrewsbury and Telford. And it's really lovely to watch how much you've grown through your transformation journey. And yes, we're starting to near towards the end of our year 2 and looking ahead to what years 3, 4, and 5 have to come. And so it's been a really, really good time for all of us. And I think one of the biggest themes that I've noticed as part of the conversations that I had with everyone was the amount of self-reflection. And the ability to pause and learn from the mistakes that we did and made in the first few years, and what could we do better? What could we really start to change and ensure that we continue to move forward in our work? So it was a lot about what we call Hansai, having that opportunity to meditate, to reflect. And it's important for us to pause and to ensure that we're really thinking intentionally about what our actions are moving forward. It's always fascinating, especially as a sensei. Really, the definition of sensei is simply those individuals who've come before. We're not necessarily experts in our work. It's just simply we've been able to pass along our own lessons of our failures as well as the successes. So it's always lovely to have folks come and talk to me about, tell me about your solutions. What did you do to achieve that? And how did you tackle this barrier? And time again, we talk a lot about respect for people. And how do you get back to those basic principles? Because ultimately, that intuition that you all already have will tell you the answers to your own questions. So I figured that I would actually, instead of offering my own individual thoughts about how you've achieved and what reflections that you have, I figured that I would let you all as a trust share with each other about how far you've come. So these are actually just some quotes, slightly paraphrased, some exactly direct, of you all as leaders and where you've come. There was a Lean for Leader graduate who said, my colleague actually asked me why I asked my team to bring ideas of their own. Her colleague was shocked that instead of just taking away the crisis and having to resolve it herself, she actually paused and say, well, what would you do to fix your problem? So it's about being encouraging and asking them to grow. Another individual said, I challenged the team whether this meeting even served our organizational strategy of patient first. It didn't. So we really kept our promises to each other, our commitment to this transformation journey, and we also found the courage. It was probably a small, quiet voice, but we found the courage to speak up. Someone very openly said to me, well, if I'm not excited about reviewing outcomes, how can I expect that of my team? We were talking about those darn people link boards that we're still trying to grapple our minds around. And it really hit home for us that we look at a lot of data here at SATH and certainly for NHS. But how do we actually make that data turn into meaningful information? Something that screams out to us from the page that we absolutely have to do something about that, as opposed to just getting blindsided by numbers that we can't even see, unless you literally walk up to the board inches away. So it's really about sharing information as a respect for people principle. If I don't set aside protected time for Kaizen, for improvement, how can I expect the team to improve the outcomes when they're overwhelmed by daily work? I want to challenge all of you to not think about that, because that has become an excuse. We've seen it time and time again with these RPIWs, how tremendous our team members are and how amazing and innovative they are in this work of improvement. They deserve the time. We need to walk in their shoes and recognize that. Someone also reflected, the team was surprised when I celebrated a near miss that was flagged by their peer. A near miss. Isn't that something to be ashamed of? No. That's something to be proud of, because someone actually had the courage, they found the bravery to say, hold on a minute, we might be putting this patient into danger. So that individual spoke up, and it was important for that leader to express gratitude for that. So really, really powerful moment there. And then last but not least, which actually moved me the most, someone told me, we're just simple people here. And I just added, with brilliant and innovative minds. We need to give you the time to grow and to develop. So I'm always obviously very moved by what you do. So I'm really just going to end with just a call to action for all of you. In the reflections that I heard just those small, quiet voices. Ooh, should I have said something about that? I really wish we had talked about that during that meeting, or, this would have been a really great opportunity. So Your call to action from here on out is to find that courage. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for having me this week.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, folks at Telford. Can you hear me okay? Waving? Great, okay, excellent. I always try to think about lessons and notes to myself when I'm hearing all of the great information from the teams around what they're doing. So my first note was to go to medical secretaries because that's where the wine is. So I hope I'm not disappointed when I go there. So that sounds good. The other thought was, I wonder when you set out on this process, how many of you thought that the consultants would respond so positively to moving towards an electronic approach rather than the paper one? Because I think often what we do is we introduce our own barriers to actually inviting change and talking to each other about process and challenge. I think we can convince ourselves that people perhaps won't want to hear about those ideas. And what I saw very evidently is that that is simply not the case. And that is a great example. You know, Andy mentioned about the risk of losing a referral. Well, if you're a patient whose eyesight might be at risk, that's a scary thought, isn't it? That you might find yourself in a position where you don't get that treatment at the time that you need because we've managed to lose something. So the idea that we're introducing processes that are actually making it safer for our patients to feel confident in our care is really important. So, and you've made that difference. So well done. So that's a fantastic outcome for everybody. In terms of looking at the implementation metrics, that's a great idea, because one of the great challenges, of course, within the 30, 60, 90-day cycles are making sure that we're keeping that rhythm and momentum going when we make these changes. So having something that allows you to think about that, maybe on a production board where you can look at it in your huddles just to see how you're doing with those things, would be a great way for you to just be reminding yourself about, are we taking that learning and living that in our everyday activities. So I would encourage you to do that. That I think is something that will help you to see that traction when you're coming back onto the stage when you're at your 60-day review or your 90-day review. So well done with that. I would say this, that it's quite a big deal doing a rapid improvement week. And for many of the team, most of the teams actually, it's the first time that they've experienced something like this. And it's really quite daunting, whether you're standing up on a stage and feeding back as you've all done, or whether you're going into an environment and talking to individuals that you maybe don't have an awful lot of contact with, who can appear at times to be quite scary because, you know, they're people who are at the top of their profession. And it can feel like quite a daunting prospect, can't it? And yet you've done that successfully. So I hope what you've been able to do is to draw and create a sense of the courage that Melissa mentioned, because you've delivered on that courage this week in taking those ideas and translating them into safer, kinder care for our patients. So well done. Well done. I wanted to just mention a little about Mel's feedback at 90 days, and we don't see it very often actually, but the improvement at 90 days that we saw with Mel's feedback, I think, gave me some real confidence about the process that's happening through that 60 days and 90 days. That the energy to be able to recognise that it wasn't going the right way, and to be able to intervene and bring it back and make sure that that improvement did continue, I thought was very impressive. Particularly in light of what's happened with the staffing changes and the volume of work that the teams are seeing. Can you imagine what that service would have looked like without all of that work? Can you imagine how that would have felt if you were working in that environment with 100% more work and was it a quarter less staff? It would have been a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. So when we think about the things that we want to avoid, the near misses that we want to learn from, it is about how we are putting into place these new ways of working that safeguard care and allow us to be able to ensure that our patients remain safe, whether we find ourselves with some workforce challenges or whether we find ourselves being really potentially overwhelmed by the work that's in front of us. So that I thought was a lovely example of how you're preparing the ground and safeguarding the process as we move forward. So I thought that was lovely. So well done. And I love the prep boxes being spread. I thought that's such a great idea and could be used anywhere, couldn't it? So that was really, really good. I wanted to mention a couple of other things. One was around partners. So we invite partners to our report out sessions, and we do get partners attending, but not in the extent that we need to. And in this complex thing called healthcare, we need to be looking at end-to-end pathways, not just those that happen in our own buildings. So we are going to have to find ways, I am going to have to find ways of encouraging our partners to come and embrace this journey with us a little bit more directly. So I will give that some more thought about how I can ensure that they understand that when we sit in meetings and talk about quality, that is not as compelling as coming to a report out and hearing and seeing for yourselves the fantastic work of the people that are delivering that care and making those changes happen. So we need to encourage them to come here and be able to see it firsthand. So that's a note to myself to make sure that's happening. I think that the final thing on this, before I maybe just briefly touch on something I was doing yesterday, is something that Melissa mentioned to me, and I wanted to sort of call it out really, which is the point that has been made in one of the presentations around, if it's not important to me, if I'm not doing it, how can I expect anybody else to? So we all have busy lives. We're all very consumed by the work. You know, that's probably in part what drove us towards joining the health service in the first place, isn't it? Our desire to care and to look after people. But this is the work. And if we're going to be successful in our journey, then we have to make sure that as leaders we acknowledge that coming to report outs as part of our standard work is so crucial. So it's lovely to see you here receiving and hopefully celebrating with the teams their wonderful achievements this week. And I'm sure that we'll be seeing more of your colleagues joining us as they start to make those adjustments in order that they can come and hear that celebration with us. That's really important, isn't it, for us all? So, where was I yesterday? Well, yesterday I was invited to go to the King's Fund, who hopefully people have heard of, because they were launching an initiative on quality improvement, and they produced a report, and they had a day session where they were talking to that. And there's about 200 people, sort of the great and the good, from the NHS were present to receive that information. And I was asked if I would go along and do a breakout session. So those of you that have done that sort of thing before will know that usually, in this case, there were 4 breakout sessions, and usually you get about 20 to 30 people in those sessions. So myself and Greg from NHS Improvement were there, asked to talk about our journey around the cultural change and what we're doing around the tools and techniques that we're learning with our friends at Virginia Mason. And in our breakout session, there was 160 people there. So I felt guilty for this long about the other breakout groups. And then we started to talk about the work. And it took me 40 minutes to get out of the room when we'd finished because of the amount of people that wanted to continue to talk to me and Greg about what we were doing, the approach that we were taking. And I think it's just a salient reminder that this isn't just about what we're doing here at SAF. This is about us really engaging with the wider NHS, about new ways of working, new approaches to how we manage the challenges that we're facing. And what I see and what I hear every time I go to an event is that the NHS really wants to work in this way. It really wants to be able to engage and to free the staff to be able to make the changes. So you're at the vanguard of that. And it's such an important role for us because we need to be celebrating that and encouraging more and more organisations to be looking at how they can embrace this journey as we're doing. So thank you on their behalf for your work, because I was talking to some of the things I've heard this week in that example, and I had the opportunity also to talk about some of the patient examples that we've seen, whether it's the child who came in with through one of our emergency departments and needed a grab pack very quickly, and because of the work on 5S that was able to be achieved, or the patient on Ward 27 who was struggling to breathe. And that's a really scary thing for a nurse to then have to run and get all of that equipment in a storeroom that was very untidy, and not knowing whether they would have everything to hand to be able to support that patient who was struggling so badly. Now the grab bags mean that that problem is just gone. In 8 seconds, that really vital equipment can be available for that patient. These are the things that you're doing and the changes that are being made. So I'm absolutely delighted to be here again, hearing to this week's improvements, and I have absolutely no doubt that the 60,000 people who pass through our ophthalmology service every year will be benefiting from those improvements that you've achieved this week. So thank you very, very much. Now we have got a few certificates, I think.
Simon, you may want to come this way.
Right, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. Have we got them in the right order? That's usually the first tricky thing, isn't it? Okay, Emma. Excellent. Well done. Well done. Thank you very much. We've shuffled them up just to make it a little bit more. There you go, Lorna. Well done. There you go, and so we've got the home team.
So we've got Bobby and Amy who are coming from the 2 home teams.
Okay,
Bobby and
excellent.
Amy.
Come on down, Bobby and Amy. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you.